Hi, I'm Dennis from Credit Karma, and this is the Future of Insurance live from ITC Vegas.
Dennis, thank you for sitting down with me in this, I don't know why I feel like it's like Peanuts, like Snoopy and stuff, but I feel like we're in this little house.
I love it. It's cozy and warm, and it is an escape from what is a very busy conference floor.
Yes, and I don't know how much people will hear that in the background or not, but we'll fight through it either way. There's a soccer net, like kicking contest over there, so every now and then there's a loud bang.
I saw it, and my kids would want me to do it, and I was like, I am probably the least qualified person at this conference to go try and kick a goal. But I may try it later and get a video just so my boys can see it.
Oh, cool. So before we get going, who are you? And Credit Karma and insurance, I don't know that people would necessarily understand the insurance side of Credit Karma, so tell us about that, but first tell us about you.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Dennis. I am the general manager of the insurance business at Credit Karma. I joined in July via acquisition. I was the CEO at a company called Zendrive prior to that for a few years, and Zendrive was a mobile telematics company, so we monitored driving behavior through cell phones. Credit Karma was a large partner of ours, and ultimately became more than a partner. And It's been a really, really wild ride and great journey. When you think about insurance and Credit Karma, it really does make a lot of sense, but a lot of people don't realize how much their credit score is a part of their insurance pricing.
Yeah.
And so, we saw an opportunity a number of years ago to really build a business that helps people understand that, hey, as your credit improves, so does your insurance rates. And in fact, what Zendrive brings to the table is helping move away from that model, which is directional at best, and really into like, hey, as your driving improves, so do your insurance rates. And so the combination of those two things makes a lot of sense. We primarily do auto insurance today. We offer home insurance as well. We offer life insurance as well, but mostly the business is focused on auto insurance and kind of our ability to differentiate there.
So the Zendrive legacy product still exists, still goes on, and then you're adding in this, like the credit side of Credit Karma to be this new like combined insurance offering.
That's right. Yeah, it's really like a marketplace that no one else can really bring to bear because people can sign up and take this test drive, or they can get direct quotes. People can see kind of what rates are going to look like for them in the Credit Karma app, which is really powerful, and the ability to say, hey, is this the right place for me? Is this the right, price, the right partner for me to have my insurance from? And the goal there is really to get the right insurance to the right people and to bring the best possible pricing, which really that drive score element brings to the table.
I was going to challenge you on the credit score piece of it as it's such a basis of pricing in a lot of insurance. And I think it's one that fast forward some amount of years may not be around in the way that it was, or maybe more challenged, or because it's a proxy. And if we get better ways to get to the actual exposure, wouldn't that be better to use in the proxy? And there's a lot of debates and issues around credit score, but you spoke to that directly already.
It's exactly, I mean, that's my soapbox. That's what I love to stand on and talk about. Actuarially, does credit score make sense? Yeah, the models prove out, right? But at the end of the day, am I just like everyone else in my zip code with the same credit score?
Right.
No, I'm not. I'm probably a better or worse driver. I probably drive at different times. I probably have different travel needs. And that's all kind of bundled into what my insurance coverage should look like, but it's also all about pricing. Like, how risky am I? That. My credit score is probably a proxy for my payment risk. It's not a great proxy for my driving risk.
Yeah. And for everyone who's like, no, I'm a good driver. You may be as good a driver as everybody else with your credit score and all these other factors, but all the drivers around you may not be, depending on what time of day you drive. So like you and your neighbor that look and feel exactly the same, but have opposite kind of driving habits time-wise, are exposed to different things. And that's what gets me, is like, how do we get to the exposure and not just proxies for it? So I love the way you're talking about like bringing them together.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And, insurance is nothing if not measured in its pace of innovation. And I think that's necessary. But at the same time, I think we're building towards a future where people are getting the right coverage at the right price, which is really important for everybody, right? The average person, I think auto insurance is something like the number 3 largest monthly expense in their household. And so for people who can save money there, they should save money there. It's a really, really big opportunity for them to cut their costs.
My homeowners is now a bigger expense than my auto insurance, which I never thought I would say. And I haven't had losses, so it's just the nature of the market right now. But I mean, that kind of makes me think, Zendrive inherently was focused on driving. Like, it's in the name, and you could change it one day, but like at that point, you became part of the Intuit family.
That's right.
Credit Karma. There's lots of other insurance. There's lots of other places where we're using credit score or something. Wouldn't it be great if we had a way to get towards a more dynamic, usage-based? Like, is that the ultimate path? And is that something that you want to be able to solve for? Is it still like auto is it's like part of American heritage and culture? Is that a big enough thing that like, I mean, it's a multi-$100 billion space.
Yeah, that's right. So I would never say that it's big enough or it is all we want to do, but it is our primary focus.
Yeah.
And you know, it's really tough to explain just how embedded auto insurance is to American culture. I mean, to your point, it's, you know, we all grew up with Flo or the Gecko or any number of characters that happen to show up during football season. I'm a huge football fan. It's to this time of year. It's like, hey, I'm seeing all of these commercials. And it's such a massive industry that, you know, we really want to get auto right. And that's really where our focus area is. But the opportunities that we have to bring that same sort of, you know, we call it frictionless certainty. So the ability for me to know what I'm getting and not have a lot of friction and confusion in the way. And then, you know, exclusive discounting or kind of better discounting purposes to other insurance industries. Like, we want to do that as well. It's just right now, the opportunity in auto is massive and it's there. And driving data is such a different data source than any other data you would bring to bear.
Right. It is an interesting point of, you talk about the transparency, is like, there's enough anxiety over what's my auto insurance rate going to be with a fixed product. But with telematics, with connected cars becoming more prevalent, there's going to be this second point of concern is like, what happens to me then? I mean, I have an app running on my phone now that's watching how I drive and showing me the discount. And it's like 11 months until it gets applied. So I am sort of like, what's going to happen over the next 11 months? Am I going to destroy the discount I built up? But I think that's part of what holds us back. And I know some of the Sprint years ago, when cell phones were like new, or it was long distance before that, had a plan that adjusted the rate every month, like the plan you were on based on your actual long distance calling when you had to pay for long distance calling. And it sounded brilliant, and it was a terrible bomb because people didn't like not knowing what they were how many minutes they had, what they were going to pay.
Is like really stress inducing, right?
So I think that's holding people back. So it's an interesting, like, bringing that up. I don't know that people are thinking of that as the real issue, but when you stop and talk about it, like, that actually is a huge holdup.
It's definitely a big concern when you do any sort of consumer study on this, and it just feels right. You know, the second you say it, everyone's like, yeah, of course that's scary to me. Interestingly, our data shows, and we've tracked billions and billions of miles of driving, people's driving behavior can change over time, but not substantially. It tends to be good drivers are good drivers. You can coach people into better behaviors, which is something we focus a lot of time and energy on. And, you know, it's a great application of AI in the space right now. Instead of saying, hey, you should slow down, you just say, hey, you speed on this road all the time. Like, you should slow down on this road. Like, that's such a tactical way to improve someone's driving behavior. But the risk of, is it going to go up? Like, that's something that I think we design around a lot, because you're taking a test drive in the Credit Karma app. That's not associated with your current policy. It's really only, hey, do you get a discount or not? And then you move forward. And I think that's just a better way to do this for people.
At least lowers that kind of hesitation so that people start to accept it more.
That's right.
As we talk about telematics and tracking people's driving to then tie into their rate, privacy was a huge issue in the past 12 months. There were, like, I remember New York Times maybe went after GM and I think State Farm, like, calling some things out. I took issue with that after reading the disclaimers. Like, I think they were more upfront than people gave them credit for, and I think in other ways that maybe they weren't. But this is going to continue to be like this privacy question: whose data is it? Did I know I was giving that information up? Like, these are complications. Because you're in this consumer-facing brand, does that preclude you from that sort of like, what's going on behind the scenes? Like, no, I chose to engage with Credit Karma. I signed up for this service. Does that protect you a bit, or do you still have those
I wouldn't
concerns?
say protect, but I also wouldn't call it concerns. I think this is really about product design, and like ultimately goes back to what conversation are you having with your users, your Credit Karma, we would say members, and how are you bringing them along that journey? So if I'm opting into a program, do I know what I'm opting into? Do I know what data is being collected and how it's being used? And do I know, like, when others may receive it and who those others may be. I think that's such a important piece that you can't really get wrong. And actually probably one of the powers of mobile telematics over auto telematics is that, I don't know if you've tried, I mean, you said you have it on your phone.
Yeah.
It is really hard to turn on location permissions for a telematics program accidentally.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas in a car, like it can be a little easier to opt into things as I'm going through an onboarding flow or whatever it happens to be. And, you know, I'm not going to take a position on the New York Times GM story, but I would say like the difference is really clear in how those two things can kind of be presented to a consumer and the necessary and important friction that you need to create for someone to opt into a program like this.
Yeah. It's a double-edged sword because we get so annoyed by it, but then we also bemoan that like you didn't let me know. It's like, well, anyway.
Before Zendrive, I was at a digital marketing company called LiveRamp and building identity products, and cookie banners were, you know, kind of as those were coming for GDPR and things, and like the amount of like privacy blindness that starts to happen. I think we have to be careful that that's not the case, because you are talking about someone's location data, you are talking about their driving behavioral data.
Yeah.
Like they need to know how that's being used, how it's being collected, and ultimately what their rights with respect to it are.
Yeah. I want to pivot a little bit to, like, we're at ITC. We haven't really talked about that except for the noise.
And the saga.
Yes. What is ITC to you, to Credit Karma? Is this a partnership story? Is this looking for solutions? Is it what brings Credit Karma to this event other than fun?
I've been remarking on how different it is this year. You know, LiveRamp as a B2B SaaS company, our purpose here was very clear. Hey, we want to meet with potential partners. We want to go through the sales motion, et cetera. You know, with Credit Karma, it's a little bit of everything. I mean, really partnerships are the areas that I'm focusing on during the couple of days that I'm here. Evangelism's also really important, right? You know, this conversation is important. Other conversations I'm going to have, and kind of every meeting I take is, hey, why is the way that we want to build insurance marketplaces better and different? You know, what are we trying to do for people? And then, you know, education and kind of the what's coming. I mean, I'm a big, we talked about the future of insurance, right? So I'm a big student of kind of what is happening. And I mentioned earlier that insurance is at a measured pace. And so this is a really good opportunity to see around the corner and, hey, what are the things that are going to be happening in 3 to 5 years? And like, what should I be looking out for?
So what are the things? You get to flip to me, the teachers. I mean, from your perspective, both your past, but your current role as well, is like, what do you see brewing? Where do you see things heading? And obviously, you have a particular piece of the industry or a piece of the kind of value chain that you're most interested in. But what does that outlook like?
I mean, I do think more and more carriers are kind of waking up to direct acquisition. And when you think about, you know, the agency or broker model versus going direct, like more carriers are saying, hey, we're now behind and we need to catch up. And so that's something that I think is happening in real time. Maybe not quite the future, but you know, you'll see the impact of that for, I would guess, the next couple of years. You know, I'd be remiss if I didn't say AI. Now, what's noise?
I haven't heard
what's
of it.
signal? Yeah, exactly.
No one's talking about it here.
Like, I think that's the hard part with AI is like what, how and why, and you know, where does it get applied? I love it for things like behavioral coaching because it's really low risk, low friction, helps in every way. It removes some of the, you know, boilerplate language that might exist otherwise. But, you know, how does it get used in claims? How does it get used in origination? Like, those are all things that I think are like newer and less scoped concepts that I'm trying to really wrap my head around still. I think those are probably the big ones that, you know, from my one day on the floor today, just kind of talking to people, are coming up a lot.
All right, well, we'll check back in 3 to 5 years. And
I want to know.
Hold you to account for all
what happened.
It is tricky. Like, the amount of energy around AI is not commensurate with the output around it yet, and that's okay. Like, we need to put more energy in it to figure out what comes out of it. But a lot of the talk falls into then efficiency discussions, and I like all for efficiency, but that's not the real issue. Like, when you talked about it, you talked about making the risk a better risk ultimately. Right. So using it to spot those moments and then taking those next best actions versus just like, we cut 5 minutes off of the rating process. Like, that's fine. That's a good thing. Or cut out.
Exactly. That probably has the most like obvious direct to bottom line impact. But to your point, does it have the most societal impact? Does it have the most member impact? Probably not. Right. At the end of the day, I think things like that, like, hey, how do we actually improve the risk profile or directly incentivize, better behaviors, which are better for both the customer and the business. These are things that I think AI can really do.
Yeah.
And in some ways, like, insurance is such a complex industry because of the regulatory environment. It's like, all right, like, those are also lower consequence applications oftentimes than, having something directly talk about your policy or other things where that sort of hallucination problem could be a real issue.
Yeah. I'm curious how it all plays out, but it's fine saving a bit of money, but like, ultimately driving profitability is important because it allows us to bring rates down, which also pushes people to have paid for insurance they didn't need, which is the best outcome for insurance.
Right.
Like, it is ultimately, it's not just a societal good, like it's this virtuous cycle that, so I appreciate your reason for talking about AI. I'd love to hear more of that on the floor than like, we do this more efficiently. Like, that's awesome. No one likes busy
totally
work.
Agree.
Like, we ultimately have to make better risks. And I hear you're basically trying to do that on both sides and helping people identify, like, here's a financial gain for you by being a better risk. Like, we can get you a better rate. And I know if you use this solution, like, you're going to drive better.
That's right.
Which, like, perpetuates.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And, the data also shows it, which is the best sort of thing because it's not just hope and forecasting.
I'll leave you with one last question. I'm not going to ask you to give away your next product or whatever, but, like, is there on the horizon, if you were to move into something beyond auto, are there themes around what you think is most sort of ripe for the same level of approach, like the telematics analog for, I don't like usage-based homeowners insurance. I live in my home. I don't know what, it feels different for some reason. Like, you go back to workers' comp, it's sort of usage-based. Like, at the end of the year, they do a true up on the premium with a premium audit. So it's like, well, how much exposure did you create? Are there other spaces where you think, like, this is the profile of risk and coverage that makes sense for us to think about expanding to? And if you're not comfortable giving away secret sauce, I totally get it. But I'm just curious, like, it feels limited to auto or maybe like bikes and scooters and like mobility kind of stuff, but I'm sure it isn't. I'm sure it's just close-minded framing.
In general, where personalization and education can benefit is sort of the areas that we would circle. And so I don't have a like, oh, it's this one or it's that one, but I can tell you the recipe is effectively like, can we educate? Can we make it really simple to understand what is otherwise a really complex product?
Yeah.
And can we offer like price benefit for behavioral change? Like, if those three things are true, great. Like, we want to be doing that.
Yeah.
Assuming those three things aren't true, we're probably not the right partner to go to market with.
Yeah. You didn't say, and there's a technology to track the behaviors. Like, do you view that as a barrier, or do you think it's a barrier in some cases? It's something we will work past. Technology is presenting itself.
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think it's like, technology should always be a means to an end, and in this case, it is the ultimate means to an end, right? And so, where there is a technological advantage or opportunity, great. If there are other ways to get to that same outcome, also great. I think technology is just a lever that will pull to be able to get people the right insurance at the right price.
Yeah, I love it, but it doesn't have to be a barrier.
Not at all.
No, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sitting down and giving me some time, and hopefully driving better rates that then step in and get us to not drive so fast in that street we feel totally comfortable on and we know like the back of our hand, and then we're looking at our phone while we're driving too fast on it. Like, all
I live on a busy road, and it's like every time someone goes by 20 miles over the speed limit, I'm always like, come on.
Are you shaking your fist? Like,
no, I'm definitely the like shake the fist dad, like, kids playing this road.
That's right.
I've definitely become that guy.
Well, all right. We started on the awkward note of the soccer ball. We'll end on that awkward note, but thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Thanks so much.
Awesome.